Today we're going to look at 6 solar panel stand ideas from the MakerPipe community, and these all have some really awesome features and different techniques and tricks involved that I think you'll find really useful if you're building a DIY solar panel stand. And these are all made with off-the-shelf electrical conduit and clamps from MakerPipe.com, and you can combine both of those materials and you don't have to do any welding or do any drilling or use any specialty tools or skills to complete awesome projects, as we'll see from the builds today. And first up, we've got this solar panel. This is a pole house setup, I believe it's called, and this was shared by Meg and John, which is really cool because you may know them if you've watched the Walnuts and Wineberries YouTube channel. And we've actually done an interview with them in the past because they're doing a whole homestead in Virginia and doing all kinds of really great things like building their own house. And something they did recently was add a solar panel setup to their property, and they used 1-inch EMT conduit and MakerPipe clamps. And as you can see, this thing is awesome. There's all kinds of really cool features in this that we're going to highlight quickly. And they actually said if you wanted to do or if you wanted to see a full breakdown of the whole setup and kind of more in detail, then definitely let us know and we can see about doing that. If you want us to do like a dedicated video or maybe an interview with them, we'd love to highlight that because there's, as you'll see, a ton of great things within this. And first of all, like I said, it's 1-inch EMT conduit and MakerPipe clamps. Some of the other ones that we'll look at today are using 3/4-inch EMT. But this is the larger tubing 1-inch EMT, and it makes sense for this larger setup. They've got 8 solar panels here, I believe, and I think this is called a pole house setup, if I'm not mistaken. And essentially, we can see here that they've got the 8 panels kind of angled towards the sun. And I think that they intended to make this adjustable when they were originally doing their plans for this. And that's why you'll see connectors like the adjustable angle connector down there, as well as the adjustable angle flange. But I think they said they're pretty happy with how it is right now and the way it's facing, so they may not make that change. But essentially, it's just a bunch of verticals, and we'll talk about how these are mounted to these concrete pavers here in a second. But essentially, it's just these verticals that are going down. And if you're going to recreate this, I would recommend doing pretty much the horizontal span first, and then attaching that to the solar panels. And something to keep in mind here, we can kind of see where they use the MakerPipe coupling in a couple of places, and that's because the span is longer than 10 foot, which is what you'll commonly find EMT conduit in. And so you can achieve a horizontal length that you're after using the coupling, as long as you brace it, of course, which is what they did. So essentially, they've just got that long horizontal span there going from one side to the other. Then they use couplings kind of sporadically to achieve the length that they were after. And they did the same thing on the bottom, of course. Just essentially the same exact setup down there. And the way they mounted this was using the conduit hanger straps, which we'll talk about because several of the builds in solar panels actually did the same kind of thing, where they used the off-the-shelf hanger straps, and those just have that kind of flat mount with the tab that has a hole already drilled in the tab, so you can attach those, and it works really awesome for solar panels and is a really great way to attach solar panels to your EMT conduit frames, as we'll see a few different times in the video. But essentially, they just made this horizontal span and then secured those hanger straps to the horizontal spans and mounted the solar panels in that way, and that worked really awesome. We can see here that of course, the front leg is shorter than the back leg, and that kind of achieves the angle that they were after for the solar panels. And then they just use various MakerPipe connectors to kind of brace this throughout. So they got a T connector grabbing on, going on to the adjustable angle up here. They've got the T connector up here that's at the top of the vertical to attach to the horizontal there. And then same exact thing here. We can also see some bracing from the middle of the panel up to the top, using some conduit and T connectors, and essentially it's just that same design all the way down, and that's how they did the main part of the structure. And this is really cool, like I said, because there's more than that incorporated into this. It has a full, of course, you don't just set up the solar panels, it's got the cables and the wires and everything set up, and it actually runs to this setup here where he's got kind of a junction box for the switch off. And then we can see that he actually mounted a PVC conduit to the frame using MakerPipe crossover clamps. And this allowed him to just have a really organized place to run the wires and the different cables and things to keep everything nice and clean and tidy underneath the solar panel. You can kind of see the different pictures here, and you can kind of notice that. And here's a close-up of the hanger straps that are mounting to the solar panels, like I was mentioning. And then we can see the PVC conduit attached to where the wires and things are running through. So that's really cool. and then of course runs to the junction box as we were looking at. And then here's we can see the base and how the pavers are mounted to the verticals are mounted to the pavers. He used the rigid flanges in the front from MakerPipe and then the adjustable flanges in the back. And then he used these Redhead True Bolt concrete anchors that essentially go into the PV or into the concrete, and then they expand to anchor them in place. So that's what he used to bolt these flanges to the concrete pavers. And that's a really awesome solution for creating a feet for this. And you could use this in a lot of different projects, not just solar panel stands. That's really cool. Oh, and here's the couplings that I was mentioning to achieve that long horizontal span. And so that's really cool to mount the legs in that way, just to give them a nice stable base. And then here we can see some kind of wide angle views of the solar panel setup all from the back, and just a really fantastic solution. A ton of great things in this, and just an awesome setup. And I think this is made because they have it's made to be off-site because the cables and wires and everything are running to what they're currently using for their setup for like an office and kind of a shed storage area. And then of course they could recreate this, and I think they might plan to like double the solar panel output by just creating the same kind of setup in a row in series in this. So just really cool ideas, and just a really great solution. And like I said, if you want to see a more detailed breakdown, let us know. We can do that for you guys. But it's cool that they're doing well and doing some awesome stuff. So really cool. Thanks so much, Meg and John, for sharing this. Next up is a solar panel stand that John put together, and this is really cool because he said that it survived a New York storm that happened last year, or this was a few years ago actually, but essentially it's just a kind of a triangular design where it has two verticals in the back, one shorter on this side and then one is longer on the other side to mount that antenna, and then essentially just use some MakerPipe adjustable angle connectors to grab onto that and then go down and kind of create this triangular frame that could be adjusted based on where the sun is facing and just based on how you want to move this around. And this is really awesome, a really great idea for making a solar panel stand if you want to do an angled setup. And I like this technique with the two verticals in the back and then just kind of the angled panel in the front using like the T connectors going from one side to the other. We can see a T connector grabbing on the middle to support the solar panels. And on this one, we don't see exactly how it's secured, but I would imagine based on how this is sitting, the solar panel is sitting on top of the conduit, I would imagine it's similar where it's just the conduit hanger straps. So it's really a pretty easy and awesome way to go if you're doing solar panels and mounting them to frames. So I imagine if you're doing it, that's the way I would recommend going. But really cool, John. It's awesome to see this survive the storm and just a really great idea. So thanks so much for sharing this. Next up is a really simple solar panel stand from also John. We've got, I think, 3 Johns so far for solar panels. So maybe this is more of a John roundup than a solar panel roundup. But we got another John here who made a solar panel setup. And this one is meant to be really simple. And once again, we've got the conduit mounted with the conduit hanger straps. And here's a good picture where you can see that flat tab just sits against the flat tab of the solar panel, or kind of the outer rim of the solar panel, and then it has a space in between the panel and this metal rim that gives you the ability to have a bolt running through, and then you can put a nut on there. So nice and simple, and just a really great way to mount these. And so we can see that he essentially did 2 of the hanger straps, one down there and one on this end, and that's how he did the main part that attaches to the solar panel. And then we can see that he used the MakerPipe adjustable angle connector and the bike seat post quick clamp hack that allows you to quickly open this and change the angle, as we can see here, and then close the clamp to secure that angle. And essentially he just did that so he can make this leg easily adjustable. And here we can kind of see the base of it, where he's got the adjustable angle flange on one leg and then a rubber pipe foot on the other leg. And this essentially allows him, like I said, nice and simple, just these 2 legs. And this allows him to kind of set up this, and we can see it here where it's fully adjustable, where he's got the one leg that's attached to the solar panel kind of stays rigid, and then that adjustable angle connector allows him to rotate these legs out and change the angle of the panel really easily. And it's just 4 pieces of conduit and some, I think 4 connectors total, and then just a few pieces of hardware, and all together is really awesome and a nice and simple setup for a solar panel on the go that you can quickly set up and move around and change the angle, and just really cool. So thanks so much, John, for sharing this idea. Next up is another setup, and this one comes from JWoww, and we actually did a breakdown of this recently, so I won't go too into detail of how this one was put together, but it's kind of similar to the one we saw from Meg and John, where essentially it has the long horizontal spans mounted to the solar panels using couplings to achieve the long length that's needed. And then this one is mounted in a different way. Actually, this one uses one hole, or I think actually two hole straps. And essentially the way those work here, let me just highlight this. Essentially the way those work is there is a flat tab kind of similar to the hanger strap. But what happens is it's just kind of flat tab there, and then there is a round piece that goes around the conduit, and then another tab, and essentially you just add your self-drilling screws or your bolts directly through those tabs into the metal rim of the solar panel, and then it just kind of secures in place because it's wrapping around the conduit. So that's a really good way to mount as well if you don't want to go the hanger strap method. And this one's good because it kind of mounts the conduit flush with the solar panel as opposed to just that slight elevation that you get with the hanger strap. So if that's important for whatever reason in your stand, that's something to keep in mind for a different way. But very similar to what we saw with Meg and John's setup, except this one has a lot of bins incorporated into it. So instead of having the verticals going to those concrete pavers, it's kind of one leg that is all secured and attached, and it has some bins in the corners to achieve that and kind of keep it all one continuous piece. Then there's some bracing with some adjustable angles and some T-connectors and different things, and a really great setup as well. And like I said, we did a full breakdown on this. If you want to check that out, I'll link it down below, and you can see kind of how I would recreate this from start to finish if you want to make this exact stand. But really awesome. Thanks so much, JWoww, for sharing this. Awesome build. Next up is a build from Eric, and this is not quite a solar panel stand, but it's a roof rack, and I thought that the mounting solution for this was really clever, so I wanted to highlight this one in this roundup. And this one, like I said, is a roof rack, and this is made for an Astro van, and this is mounted in a really cool way where, yes, again, it does use the conduit hanger straps, but instead of those being mounted or bolted directly to the solar panels, they're using a bracket here that attaches to the solar panel, and I imagine probably came with it, that then sits on top of the hanger strap. And this is really cool because this kind of creates almost a flush mount between the conduit and the solar panel. Kind of gives it a lower profile, and the conduit sits next to the solar panel as opposed to directly under it, which I think could be useful for different things, especially if you're doing something like a roof rack, as you can see here. And this is just a really awesome build. They've got two solar panels side by side. We can see where they did that method with that L bracket here on one, and then we saw just now where they kind of stacked two of those L brackets to put two side by side. And this looks like it's working great. And it's just a really great solution. And like I said, you may not be making a roof rack, but you still are putting together a frame with the empty conduit and connectors. And this is a good mounting solution, I think. That'd be really useful for a solar panel stand. So I wanted to highlight it. But really cool. Really appreciate you sharing this, Eric. Looks like an awesome roof rack and an awesome solution. So appreciate it. Last but not least is a pretty simple but awesome setup from Craig, and this was used to attach solar panels to an existing structure they already had made with the EMT conduit, and I think this was used at Burning Man a few years ago. And essentially they just mounted a MakerPipe T-connector that grabs on to this EMT conduit that's sticking up out of the structure that they already had in place. As we can see here, I believe the T-connector is somewhere in there, and then the vertical going up. And then they kind of broke up the vertical span and kind of separated the two halves, and then used a MakerPipe coupling to join those two pieces back together, and then use the bike seat clamp that we saw earlier, which makes this really easy to open and close to change the angle. And that's so they can adjust the solar panel, kind of undo that, twist it around to change the angle, which is a really clever way to be able to make this adjustable. And so that's how they did that, by just splitting up that vertical piece. And then they mounted the solar panel to the EMT conduit using a short stub of EMT conduit that just sticks up there just a tiny bit. And then they have 4 bolts going into the solar panel. And then they also used a 45-degree connector that's kind of hard to see, but essentially just attaches to that vertical and then is angled. And then you have the flange that those are going into to mount the solar panels to. And that's how they did that there. And that's really cool and just a really great solution. As we can see, here's a better angle of it, where you can see that 45 and flange side by side. And that's really awesome, and just a really simple, it's kind of a lot of connectors all in one spot, but makes it really simple overall because it's just one piece of EMT conduit attaching to that structure they already have in place. And here you can see they've got a few of them set up, and that's really cool. And even if you don't have a structure already in place, you can kind of utilize this same technique and then just make a stand that comes out of this coupling, and then you can add some different legs, make a tripod design, or use any of the other methods that we've seen for making that stand, and then customize it by mounting it in this way and utilizing this technique for hinging it. So really cool. And there's a lot of great ideas in this build and in all of them. And I'll be sure to link each of the projects down below if you want to check any of them out in more detail. Hope you guys found this useful and helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to comment those down below. And if you enjoyed this, leave a like and consider subscribing. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.